Okay, get ready for one of the most unbelievable stories of human will you'll probably ever come across. We're going to talk about a man named Dashrath Manjhi. He came from a tiny village in India, and he earned a nickname that says it all, the Mountain Man.
Just take a look at this picture for a second. That is a road carved right through a mountain of solid rock. Now, you're probably thinking, wow, that must have taken a huge construction crew, tons of dynamite, heavy machinery. Nope, none of that. This was built by one man. Just one guy.
Right, that's the first thing that pops into your head. How? How is that even possible? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out. So let's get into it.
All right, so to understand this, we have to go to a place called Gelar. It's a small, very poor village in Bihar, India. And for as long as anyone could remember, this village was completely isolated from the rest of the world by this enormous ridge of rock. This wasn't just some big hill in the background. It was a wall that controlled everything about their lives, and sometimes, literally, the difference between living and dying.
So here's what that wall really meant. If you needed to get to the nearest town, for a doctor, for a school, for anything, you couldn't go through the mountain. You had to go all the way around it, and that journey was a brutal 55 kilometers. What Manjhi eventually did was cut that down to just 15 kilometers, a huge difference. But what on earth could possibly drive a single person to try and move a mountain?
Well, the answer, as it so often is in these incredible stories, is love. And, heartbreakingly, the grief that comes when you lose it. See, this whole thing didn't start as some grand project for the public good. It was personal. It started with a promise, forged in tragedy.
So, the year is 1959. Manjhi's wife, Falguni Devi, is making her way across that dangerous mountain path. She was just trying to bring him his lunch where he was working, but she slipped and she fell, and she was very, very badly hurt.
He was frantic, of course. He had to get her to a doctor, but the nearest one was that 55-kilometer journey away. The mountains stood in their way, and because it took so long, because they couldn't get her the medical care she needed in time, Falguni Devi died. That mountain wasn't just a barrier anymore. It was the thing that had taken the love of his life.
And right there, in that moment of just crushing grief, Dashrath Manjhi made a decision, a vow. He looked at that giant mass of rock and he promised himself that he would break it, so that no one else from his village would ever have to die the way his wife did.
And that vow, well, it kicked off one of the most amazing feats you'll ever hear about. This was an epic one-man war against a mountain, and it would go on for over 20 years.
So what did he have to take on, this impossible job? No dynamite, no excavators, no money. He actually sold his family's 3 goats just to buy his equipment. And what was that equipment? A hammer and a chisel. That's it. A man, a hammer, and a chisel versus a mountain.
22. Let that number sink in. For 22 years, from 1960 all the way to 1982, this was his entire life. Every single day, he got up, walked to that mountain, and just started chipping away, stone by stone, chip by chip. For 22 years.
You can imagine what the other villagers thought, right? They thought he'd gone crazy. He even said it himself. When I started hammering the hill, people called me a lunatic. But instead of stopping him, he said that making fun of him, it just steeled my resolve. It actually made him more determined. He was driven by that promise he made.
And then, after all that time, after 22 years of sweat and pain and being called a madman, the impossible happened. He did it. His will, one man's will, actually broke a mountain.
I mean, look at these final dimensions. The path he created is 360 feet long. That's longer than a football field. It's 30 feet wide enough for a car, and it's 25 feet deep. He didn't just make a path. He basically carved a small canyon, all by himself.
And this is what it was all for. This is the result. It's a lifeline. This path he carved by himself finally connected his village to the rest of the world. That journey that used to take hours now took minutes. Think about that. Suddenly, people could get to a hospital. Kids could get to school. The entire village had access to a future they never could have imagined. He kept his promise.
But Manjhi's story doesn't just stop when the path is finished. Because the man who everyone called a lunatic, he became a legend, a national hero. He became a symbol of what a single person, fueled by love, can do for everyone around them.
It took a while, but people started to realize what he had done after he finished in '82.
and the recognition just grew and grew. When he died in 2007, the government gave him a state funeral, which is a massive honor. Then, his story was made into a huge movie. And then finally, in 2016, his country made sure his name would live on forever.
And here's how they did it. They put him on an official postage stamp. That's him, the mountain man, immortalized. It's a guarantee that his incredible story of love and sheer unbelievable determination will never, ever be forgotten.
So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? I think it's this. Dashrath Manjhi was a poor man from a forgotten village. He had nothing, but he didn't sit around waiting for the government to help or for some miracle to happen. He saw a mountain in his way, and he decided to move it. He changed his world with his own 2 hands.
And really, his story just leaves you with one big question to ask yourself. You and I, we might not have a literal mountain of rock in front of us, but we all have our own mountains, don't we? Our own obstacles. What Dashrath Manjhi showed us is that with enough determination, with a strong enough reason, maybe no mountain is too big to move. So it makes you wonder, what mountains are standing in our way?